Hello, everyone. Welcome to our next episode of the Magdalene interview series. These conversations have been so rich for me. I am learning so much from every conversation, and I'm sure today is going to be no different. I have with me a very special friend, Dr. Neesa Ginger Mills, and Neesa and I had together. Gosh, has that been? That was 2 years ago, huh? Like a year and a half ago. It was,
Mouth
December
the
a
book?
year ago. So we
Yeah,
started our
a
project
year
2
ago.
years ago. We did a Mount Shasta book collaboration project together. And, that's like we were married for a year, basically. And had an amazing experience with that. But she's also got a relationship with the Magdalene. So, of course, as you know, I've created this series in part because I'm leading a pilgrimage to the south of France in September. And so I wanted to bring people into my own learning and expanding and discovery as I go, through the different, I feel like kind of initiations preparing me to go to France. And if you feel called to come with us to France, please reach out to me and we'd love to have a conversation with you. So today I've got Dr. Neesa with me. Neesa, will you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about like who you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Dr. Neesa Mills, and I am the founder of the Feminine Freedom Codes. And this Magdalene conversation really helps me weave back to how all of that got started in my life. So, the Feminine Freedom Codes is ultimately a system that grew out of 6 paintings that I created over a number of years. One of them is on the wall behind me there. And these are geometry codes, and each face of it represents a face of the awakening feminine as it's come through me. That particular one there is about the waters, water being a feminine aspect of who we are on the planet as bodies, as humans, and finding our way back more deeply to recognizing the waters as a source of how consciousness moves through our bodies, and finding again a deeper relationship and respect, not only with those waters inside of ourselves, but with the earth waters and the waters that fall from the sky, and so on. So that's me in essence. I'm currently living in a town called Brevard, North Carolina, having relocated from magical Mount Shasta just over a year ago. And, just finding my way here, opening a new practice and working with people online.
That's so great. And I have a scarf of Nisa's that is an altar like prayer scarf that has that water symbol on it. I've been working with that now for over a year as well, about a year and a half. And I love your work, and I love the way that you have brought something to the feminine that it feels very unique and needed, because so many times people talk about faces of the feminine and we get archetypes like Mary Magdalene and stuff. And your work invites us to go kind of into a different area of our brains and of our like intuitive senses to feel into that. So I've loved having that scarf. It's like I didn't know there was a such thing as a magical scarf, and now I have one.
Yeah, well, I didn't know either. It just all just started streaming through me, and here we are.
Well, you described to me that your relationship with Magdalene was like a slow burn over nearly 30 years. So I would love to hear a bit about your journey, or maybe even taking us back to the very beginning and what opened that doorway for you.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll first say that I was brought up in a Catholic family, like very rigorous as a child, and God was defined as a guy, this masculine figure in the sky somewhere. And I'm like, okay. So Fast forward, when I was in my 30s, I found myself kind of stumbling into a mystery school training, going into shamanic studies. And there I started to discover that there was this whole other face of divinity, which is the feminine face of divinity. And it just changed my whole trajectory starting on that path. And right about the same time, I was pregnant with my second child. Her name is Sasha. And somebody handed me a book at that time called I Remember Union. And it was a channeled book about Mary Magdalene and depicting her as this mystic, as this feminine face of Christ, as this healer and this highly evolved being. And it touched my heart so deeply that as I was reading this book, she in this channeled work, the interpretation was that she was also midwifing. And so there was this part in the book where it was midwifing, this child to come into being. And she would say to the baby, like, you are light, and light you shall remain. And I started chanting that to my baby for 3 months every day. I first in utero, and then after she came out, I would tell her that every day. And I gotta say, this kid is pretty amazing. Like, she's someone who did a lot less forgetting than most of us about who she really is. And that just has always just sat with me with such reverence and gratitude. And yeah, isn't that so beautiful? I know, just knowing I was going to talk to you kind of got me thinking about all of this. And then, a few years later, I came across another book called the Magdalene Manuscripts, which was another channeled book about sacred sex, basically. And this channel piece really got into this belief that Magdalene and Yeshua were married and were doing these high frequency practices, basically sexuality as prayer. And that touched me again. And just all these layers over the years just keep opening more and more. And, and then later on, I'm finding myself deep into my own womb studies, like really like listening to my own body and starting to do breath practices and circuits and coming to this kind of awaken the memory of this deep feminine knowing in my body that, had been shut down like for literally like thousands of years, right, through our lineages. And so it's just become a full-on focus for me ever since. I know. Who knew, right?
So amazing. I relate to so much of that, like that first moment when you realize, like, oh, she was a person of massive power, but I was raised in a religion that taught me that she was kind of this small person. And I felt that too, this like, because I was going through the same feelings about me. I was like, I thought I was this tiny good girl and that was all I was meant for. And I think I'm really powerful actually. And it's so moving. Then you experience these layers of who she is every time. For me, it's like, that's a mirror. Like, I'm also like a sexual priestess and, have this capacity to experience this depth of connection of souls with intimacy in a way that didn't fit in the small boxes. So, I love all of that. And how beautiful with your daughter. That's actually really unique. I've never heard anybody refer to Mary Magdalene as a midwife. I haven't heard of that book before either. So that's kind of a cool one. I like that.
Yeah, it's a cool book. I think I picked it up again a few years ago just to look at it. It's very poetic. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And then over years, more and more unfolding, and the Gospels of Magdalene, and more writings coming out, and all of that just kept surprising me more and more and more. Just seeing the breadth and depth of this historical character, but who is not just a historical character. She is this representation of the feminine divine that lives in all of us. And I feel like this is the reason that she's made this huge splash in recent years in the consciousness of women around the globe. It's like, oh, okay, it's time for this. It's time for this awakening. And, she's one of many faces of the divine feminine that are being rediscovered. And certainly in the Christian pantheon, I've done some deep study with Mother Mary as well, and Grandmother Anna, grandmother of Jesus. And, there's obviously, so many powerful historical priestesses, but those are just the ones that have spoken most deeply to me. And in fact, I was thinking about one of the geometry portals. We mentioned the water one right there, but I've got my card deck sitting here, right here. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this one is called the Diamond Heart, and its teachings involve the Magdalene, Mother Mary, Grandmother Anna, and Yeshua, like all as guides that literally dropped in and taught me this geometry. And I just the deeper understanding, like in my own heart, of like what it is to merge these high forces of the masculine and the feminine, and that Christ didn't come here alone. He was surrounded and supported by these highly evolved women.
Who says that, right? I love
Right. Yeah, they left that out of the story that they told us in religion.
that. Yeah. So you do this feminine freedom codes, and from what I understand, you work with um, like shamanic traditions, Christian mysticism, Egyptian influences, and I'm curious how those have all shaped what you now call the feminine freedom codes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, we all are shaped by our experiences, aren't we? And the way I approach all of this is, obviously I can tell my own stories to people, but ultimately I'm just interested in helping women and men, honestly, to awaken to the truth of the feminine. And what does it mean to embody those principles inside? As I learn, we learn together more, to deepen more and more into what that actually is. So yes, I have shamanic training, and I've been an energy worker for 30 plus years now. Can't believe that. And so all the teachings that were given to me by so many wonderful teachers over the years have influenced and informed how I work with others. But ultimately, I'm an advocate that each one of us has our own path and journey here. And it is not for me to tell you what is right or wrong or what lens to see things through. But we talk about historical beings like Magdalene, as ascended master beings, and how it's not about them doing anything, right? It's about us, and activating these spaces of consciousness within our own selves. and how we do that is highly individual. So the work that I offer, is just honestly just to help people get out of the way and find their own path and truth and what they're here to do in their gifts and talents, but just their perceptions and how we can support each other in finding our way to a more peaceful reality, as well as evolving our own souls to a space that we are here, with the intention to get to. Does that make sense?
I really love that. Yeah. And this piece really resonates for me that as I'm leading this pilgrimage to the south of France, that it's not, I am calling it a pilgrimage because it is about devotion, but it's not actually about devotion to Mary Magdalene. It's about devotion to oneself, devotion to your own codes, the things that are living in your bones that need the space and the breath and the sacred space to awaken and fill you up. It's like we have those things within us, and I think many of us are waking up to those things. So giving that space and breath for that, and that, to me, that's what Mary Magdalene has whispered to me the whole time. I think in my whole relationship with the feminine, it's never been it's been so different than my relationship with a masculine sky god. It's never been like, hey, worship me, or hey, let me impart this higher wisdom that is not yours. It's like, no, it is me. And then it brings me into the earth, and I'm like, the earth is me, and we are it's so different. I just love that. So I love what you said, and that's how you do your work as well, that your work isn't about you being some kind of spiritual guru, because we're each our own guru.
Yeah, 100%. And what you just said there about taking this space and time as part of the intention for your pilgrimage, I also just sincerely appreciate that. As a person who, like all of us, get really busy, in life, it just and I'm looking at my geometry pieces here. I've got 6 major portals, and the times when these got created was because I gave myself some space from all the busyness, right? I've been not in that space lately, and I'm longing for more of that, where I can
Me too.
let it come through. And these paintings came through me, what? I think about that now. It's kind of wild. And who knew that they were actually carrying codes that can support other people in their own awakenings as well. So I really honor what you're doing that way, and I hope people will take the time for themselves to self-discover whatever it is. I mean, for me it's painting, but for someone else it might be something completely different, but still something that is an awakening space inside themselves, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think too, this concept of so many of us walking around today carrying lots of tools in our tool bag, our spiritual tool bag, that come from a lot of places. Some of the tools that I carry come from my ancestry, which I had to discover in a similar way to the tools that I've learned from other people's traditions and lineages and things. And I recognize that in Mary Magdalene as well. We don't actually know what her ethnicity was, but we do know that she carried spiritual traditions from a lot of different backgrounds. And that's a way that I think that we relate with Mary Magdalene. And so, and everything you just described, your work is that. So I'm curious, this has been important to me, as these Magdalene conversations had felt very narrow for me. And that's why I created this interview series, is to widen the conversation. With you drawing from a range of spiritual influences, I'm curious what practices or modalities you currently use in your work and where you understand them to come from. Like, how do we be in that relationship with where these traditions have come from, especially given that there's a lot of, people of color who've carried these traditions under great oppression for us to be able to access them today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, God bless us all. I always kind of come back to that, in our imperfections and how it is that we deliver our messages. But, the shamanic mystery school training that I mentioned earlier, that I was involved with for 5 years in the training, and then years beyond that, when my kids were little, was rooted in multiple traditions. And each time, we were in any kind of ceremony, it was very clear the lineage that we were walking from and through, from different parts of the globe, and Native Americans as well. And I know there's so much sensitivity about all of this now, with white people stepping into Native ceremonies and so on. But I'm just grateful that they let me in, because it's such a gift. And I got to really change my own perspective by sitting with people who are not like me. And I hope that everything I do is reverential to that. And like, anybody is welcome in my circles, whoever they are, they want to, if they're attracted, like, come on in.
So I really love that. I love that. And I think you being able to say, like, I hope that I'm being respectful. Like, I think I think it matters so much for us as white women carrying lots of traditions, or any color that we come from, if we're carrying traditions that aren't ours, that we're asking ourselves these questions. And what I always kind of acknowledge is that I'm not going to know everything. I'm not going to know everything that I could say that could offend someone or whatever. Like, I'm always going to be learning about how to be more respectful in these ways. But if I can come into a space and I know how to repair, and I'm willing to say, shit, I did that wrong. I'm so sorry. How can I make amends? That goes so far. And unfortunately, I think that's a skill that a lot of humans don't possess. And I really hope that these, so many women coming into our spiritual practices, like, if anyone can hold right relation, it has to be this group of people, to be able to broaden this conversation and not exclude people of color from the very practices that we're doing that came from their traditions. Like, it just is, it's kind of astounding to witness what's happening right now. And so I really appreciated where you were like, I'm looking, I'm hoping, I'm aware. And I know you're that type of person to say, like, I'm aware that I don't know everything and I might get it wrong, and I would be the first person to try and make it right if I did.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great way for us to be in right relationship with some of these practices. And, of course, we're always deepening that. But I would love to, as we kind of begin to wind our conversation down, Neesa, you had mentioned receiving living light keys as transmissions. Do you want to speak more into that?
Yeah, well, that is a term that I'm using for these 6 master portals.
I see. I
Yeah.
see.
So they contain light keys. They are light keys that, when used through meditation practices and gazing, like a traditional yantra out of Indian tradition, Hindu traditions. That's an ancient practice, and I'm sure it's probably cross-cultural. And I didn't even know about it. I just started channeling these images, and next thing I know, I've got this whole series, and they all make sense to me now. And so, yeah, they are keys. They are consciousness keys when utilized in that way. And I'm just in the process of putting together a full deck. I don't actually like to call it an oracle deck because it's a little bit different than that, but
Yeah.
it is. I consider it a feminine codex. It's like ways to access different parts of your own conscious awareness. So we mentioned earlier, for example, the water portal, and there'll be 5 more facets of
Oh,
water awareness
ooh.
where you can touch into your emotional self, your spiritual self, your creative self, and your primordial self. And the last one is called emissary. It's like when the part of you that wants to really be a carrier of this kind of wisdom. So that's how the deck is being developed, and I'm super excited about it.
How can people lean in and get closer to and learn more about how to work with you?
Yeah, can we just drop the website link?
Off the web. Yeah. What's your favorite way to work with people though? Like, are you doing this in groups? Do you have something ongoing? Are you one-on-one?
Yeah, I am. Well, I'm in a transition right now. I'm finishing up an online group that I've been doing with these portals, and I'm just trying to get myself really anchored in this new community where I moved to and local practice and so on. But I'm certainly available to work with people one-on-one online, and the groups will definitely be back. But if individuals want to just learn more about this feminine codex, I on my website you can go and it's fun, and you can pick a card and it will tell you more about it. So that's
Oh, so
a
fun.
good way in. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Neesa, thank you so much for joining us today in this conversation. And I think I would like to ask something along the lines of the question is still dropping in here. Like, if you could share a message from the years of wisdom of what you've really dropped into and the tremendous spiritual um, human that you are. I want to say this wisdom, this crone that you embody. What do you feel like is the most important message for women today who are on this spiritual path?
You know, if I had to just distill it down into a sentence, it's like learn to listen to yourself. Like your deep inner wisdom, your body is so brilliant. There's just so much information that's just resting inside of you, you know, and I'm a womb worker. So, like, because of the feminine history that we've all lived through, you know, I've come to understand that the feminine womb contains like so much wisdom. It's unbelievable when you start to unpack all of that. So that's where I go, you know, just going back and giving yourself the space to listen. Just like, what does your womb have to say? You know, what does your heart have to say? What does your higher wisdom have to say?
That's so beautiful. And I feel like you've played a mother role in my life, Neesa, and I just have all this emotion like about getting the opportunity to do such a big birthing process with you in the Mount Shasta book that we did together and everything, and just the tremendous human that you are. I just want to say thank you for who you are in the world and the ways that you influenced me. And it's so profound to hear someone in your stage in life to just say, the most profound thing I can say is learn to listen to yourself. Thank you. Thank you on behalf of all of the daughters across all of the world who wish their mothers would just say that thing.
I know. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you too, Melissa. I appreciate this conversation, and oh my gosh, you sure helped me birth that book too. I'm like, whoo, the birthing pains were pretty intense at times. Like, remember, I wanted to quit. I was like, I'm not having this baby. We're done.
We did it. So yeah, if you're listening still, go check out Call of the Mystical Mountain. It's a collaboration book with all kinds, everything in that book, range from Bigfoot to inner city in the mountain to Pleiadians to, healing trauma. I mean, that was such a cool project. Well, thanks again, Neesa, for sharing your story and your time with us today. And thanks to those of you who watched, and keep your eye out for our next episode of the Magdalene interview series. We'll see you next time.